Good evening. My name is Jim Patton. I'm Director of Related Services in Baltimore City Public Schools. Related Services, it's a special ed term for services and supports that help students to be successful in the least restrictive environment. So if by having extra support, a child can be in a general ed classroom instead of a self-contained class, that would be using like a related service. So it's PT, OT, speech, psychology, social work, audiology. We do adaptive phys ed, Special Olympics, and with programs for hearing impaired and visually impaired students. They come through my office. My office also does a lot of work around mental health and behavior supports, which is what I'm going to talk about tonight.
Good evening. My name is Eric Banzak. I'm the coordinator of the Prevention and Intervention Office under the Whole Child Office at Baltimore City Schools. My office works closely with the Related Service Office, but we primarily focus on school-wide behavior frameworks, which include restorative practice, PBIS, mindfulness, other programs that are not as big but do have an impact on some of the schools, is Capturing Kids' Hearts, Move This World, and we also deal with bullying, which I'll give a presentation tonight.
Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so in Baltimore City Public Schools, these are the types of mental health supports we have available. In my office, we have 200 school social workers. Every single school has a social worker. They're not full-time at every school. The assignment is based on the size of the school. But every school has a social worker. We also have 140 school psychologists. In the Office of College and Career Readiness, there are 85 school, or what we used to call guidance counselors. And we have community-based mental health clinicians in 120 schools. That project is called Expanded School Mental Health. It's been around since, I think, the early 90s, and it has 4 partners: University of Maryland, Johns Hopkins Bayview, Catholic Charities, and Hope Health. And then we also, through the Expanded School Mental Health, have telepsychiatry available if the student is being seen by one of the University of Maryland clinicians. So it looks like a lot. Are we meeting the needs of our students? No. No, we're pushing very hard. Trauma-informed care and trauma-informed practice is something that comes out of my office. We have 2 years ago received a $2.4 million grant from the Department of Education focused on trauma-informed care and trauma resilience. We've done a lot of trainings in schools. We have focus schools where we provided additional training and supports. And we're just now applying for a 3rd-year extension to continue the work moving forward. Ultimately, the work around trauma is going to lives with the whole child. It lives in the climate and culture of schools. And we want to try to set up our mental health clinicians to be working with principals, to be doing coaching, to carry that work forward. And that's what we're trying to move forward to there. Next slide. So, there are a number of mental health frameworks, and I was glad to hear Eric use the word framework because that's what I did when I created this slide the other day. So I call them frameworks because they really do frame our work and the concepts that go around it. Child wholeness is one of the concepts of our district blueprint. Last year, our CEO, Dr. Santelises, released a blueprint that there are 3 core components. One of them is child wholeness, and that is taking our children where they are when they come to school. Not a deficit model, not a what's wrong with you model, but more of a how can I make you safe, how can I make you connected, how can I help you to become empowered and be successful in school, and looking at the whole child. And so Dr. Warren, who's the executive director of the Whole Child, I was in a meeting with her recently, and she said, child wholeness was set up to be one of the 3 prongs of the blueprint, but she said it really kind of goes over everything. And I said, well, really, if you look at the other 2 components, the second component is leadership. And that's developing visionary leaders in our school. And you've been in our schools, I'm sure, where you wouldn't be here. There's a difference from one school to the next. You feel it when you come through the door sometimes in terms of climate and culture and control and discipline and connecting with kids. And so it's focusing on developing our leaders. And then the 3rd prong is literacy. And that's focusing on critical thinking, higher level critical thinking, which is necessary to be successful with the curriculum and to move on to college and career success. The second framework is, actually I also should say, the second framework is social emotional learning. We have a number of curriculum that are already in place in the district. This ties right into child wholeness. There's one called School Connect, which is in high schools, Second Step, which is in middle schools. Incredible Years, I know that's through my office, that's in pre-K through 2nd grade. It's a structured program that focuses on building social skills, communication, and literacy, pre-literacy skills. Social emotional learning also in the child wholeness has a framework that we're using. It's called CASEL, Consortium for Academic Social Emotional Learning. Is that something? Collaborative. It's an agency based out of Chicago, and they come and work with us once a month and help us to guide our work around social emotional learning. They have 5 pillars, and they're things like self-awareness, social awareness, decision making. Relationships. Okay, so interestingly, the reason I brought that up is I'm doing a lot of research related to trauma. I'm working my dissertation and I'm also leading this work. There are definitions of trauma-informed practice or trauma resilience, which is helping people move through the trauma, move beyond it. There are definitions that are almost identical to the definition of social emotional learning. So it's amazing to me how the concepts that we're shooting toward are aligning. So, and that ties right into what I said, trauma-informed and trauma-responsive practice. Another framework is culture and climate strategies that Eric talked about that are really more his office, things like mindfulness and restorative practice and PBIS. And then there's policies and procedures that set a framework. Bullying is one I know that you're obviously clearly interested in. My office developed a policy on abuse and neglect last year that was approved by the board. We had a policy that was about 20 years old. It was a page and a half long, and it basically said abuse and neglect is bad. If you see it, you need to report it or there's a consequence. Now, being bureaucratic, maybe we have a 19-page document that spells out exactly what abuse and neglect are, what staff need to do to identify it, to report it, what the responsibilities are, and we have mandated that our social workers have a mandatory training. They're having it on the 28th in abuse and neglect, and they do it in every single school. And the abuse and neglect policy is to be done, and I met with 2 groups of principals today and 2 tomorrow, and it's about this. Every single school, the social worker must do at least a 30-minute presentation covering a designated set topics, and they must have every single person in the school attend. And if they can't attend, there's a voiceover webinar. But so the social workers are responsible by the end of October to make sure that everyone in the school has had that training. So that's new. And it really is going to set the tone for increased awareness of what to look for, for all of them, everybody in the school, not just the teachers, not just the administrators, but everyone there, including parents. Professional development for staff and parents that includes student voice. Okay, next slide. So behavior supports. How do we support behavior? So IEPs are for special education students. 504s are for students with disabilities, but they're supported in a way that doesn't need the special education as much process and practice. Student-specific supports. My office with the school psych and the social workers, I'll get an email about a student who's in crisis, and we will reach out first to the mental health clinicians assigned to that school, who would hopefully know the student, to have them investigate what's going on. And we provide a student-specific support from there. We also look at suspensions. When any student with special education, or actually gen ed now we're looking at, gets 5 days, a total of 5 days, 8 days, or 10 days suspension, someone from my office reaches out to the mental health clinicians and says, what's going on with Johnny? Because the social worker who might be there just 3 days a week might not even know that Johnny was suspended, because it could have been an office, some type of an office suspension, and nobody thought about plugging it into mental health and mental health supports. And the social worker not only provides mental health support, but does a lot with the community and helping the families to get connected to community. Sometimes they need wraparound service, and the social worker is the person who helps that to happen. Functional behavior assessments and behavior intervention plans. So the behavior assessment, functional behavior assessment, to say in a couple of sentences, basically it's meeting with the team, observing the student, including the family, and looking at a student who's having difficulty with behavior in the classroom, and looking at the function. And when someone acts out, they're either seeking something, like attention, or trying to get away from something, like math, because I hate math and I don't want to look stupid in class. Right? So it looks at what the function of the behaviors that the student is having is and tries to replace it with a more healthy function, a more appropriate function. Behavior intervention plan is a plan on how you do that. Now, it's to support students, but really it's for adults. It's geared toward the needs of the student, but it tells the adults how to work with and how to connect with that student. Accommodations and modifications, they could be things like being able to get up and go over into the quiet corner if you feel overstimulated, or being able to get a drink or go for a walk, or go to some of our schools are developing under the whole child. What are they calling the peace rooms? Student wholeness rooms. and our OTs have actually worked with the school staff to put in appropriate activities and types of things to help students to relax. And then therapeutic behavior aids, if the student is really in crisis and is placing himself or others in pretty imminent danger, some of our students get a therapeutic behavior aid, which is a one-on-one adult who helps them through their day. And then referral to community resources. And that's usually done by our social work staff. Next. Okay. So student-specific interventions and supports. So we have this team. So FBA and BIP, remember, Functional Behavior Assessment, Behavior Intervention Plan. We have a team of 6 people who are kind of SWAT style that will be dispatched to a school to help a student or help the school to support a student who's having emotional crisis and behavior crisis. And they also offer clinics once a week, and they do professional development multiple times per year. Crisis team, sad to report, we sent out a whole bunch of them this past year, and it was really very, very disturbing. We lost 10 of our students in an 18-month period, 10 students to gun violence. And anytime, the most common crises are death of a student or death of a teacher or faculty member. And we sent out, I believe, 35 this year. And they range from reaching out to the social worker and the psychologist at the school and saying, be sure to be there tomorrow, to sending as many as 10 or 12 people, depending on the needs of the school. Also, when a family experiences multiple losses, we will go to schools of siblings that maybe weren't injured, but still were impacted. And we sent out as many. There was a fire several years ago where several members of the family were lost. We sent out 11 teams that day to the schools that the kids were attending and the ones that they had attended, because everybody was in crisis and was grieving. The crisis teams are made up of school psychologists and social workers from my office. Then we also reach out to the community folks and to the school counselors. And if they have someone at the school, because they're not in every school, but if they have someone at the school, they report as well. Now, those 4 big groups of clinicians, we didn't start working together until the incident with Freddie Gray in 2015. The city was in crisis. The schools were closed one day. And I pulled the managers for social work and psychology in my office, and I said, what are we going to do? How are we going to support our kids? Everybody's in crisis. How do we provide mental health support to an entire district? And we were like 200 schools then. And we had the idea, which we never had before. What about the school counselors? Why don't we pull them into this? I didn't know who they were. I didn't know how many they were. I didn't know what schools they were at. All I knew is they were in the Office of College and Career Readiness. We really had not worked together. But now I can tell you everyone, their names, what school they're in, and how many days a week they're at the school. Then also we reached out to the community-based clinicians, University of Maryland and Johns Hopkins University, where we have some partnerships around mental and behavioral health. And inside of one day, we arranged a schedule for all of our schools to have between 1 and 6 clinicians that reported there every day, all day, for a week and a half, till things became more settled. And then we also developed a lot of materials for education, for teachers, for parents, for students, how to talk to your student about crisis. And a lot of those are actually still on our website. You can find them if you click around. But so what we found was it worked really well. Did we meet everybody's needs? No. But we had not worked together before, and we realized that there was a lot more power in doing that. And we've been doing it ever since, which I'm excited about. So emergency petitions, that's when a student is in danger of imminent harm to self or others, suicidal ideation or homicidal ideation. And there's a whole process that we go through for that, but basically it's arranging for the student to go to a hospital where they can get more intensive evaluation and supports. And usually it's Johns Hopkins or University of Maryland. The social worker is usually the one who facilitates that along with the principal and the parents. Alignment of mental health resources, that's what I just told you about. Suicide prevention, that's a program that we have in middle and high school. It's called Cognito. It's avatar-based, and students can do it, and teachers can do it. It talks about what to look for in other people, and if someone says something or does something, when to seek assistance. Change in placement. Sometimes the school's not a fit for whatever reason, and the department through the Office of the Whole Child will facilitate a change in placement. And then referral to and coordination with community resources. We were talking earlier about our English language learners. We have a lot of unaccompanied minors who've been through a lot of different types of trauma in coming to our country. And we do a lot of partnering with places like the Esperanza Center, Johns Hopkins Bayview, different community partners to provide them additional support, mental health. Next slide. So I was talking, here we are again with the alignment. I talked about that just a minute ago. So right now, I'm involved, my office is involved in cross-functional teams within the district, related services, college and career readiness, teaching and learning, family community engagement, communications, and school police. 3 people, one from community engagement, one from Whole Child, and one from the Promoting Student Resilience Grant, went to the mayor's event the other day to give out information and talk with folks. We had not worked together like that before. And then also cross-functional teams with our community partners. We're working more closely with the Family League, the School of Social Work. I'm a mayor's task force for the police consent decree. They want input regarding mental health and how to make police officers more aware of how to deal with people who have mental health disorders or in mental health crisis. And so they asked if I would be a part of that. So we've only had a couple of meetings, but it seems like exciting work. And you see some of our other departments. I'm not going to read them all to you. But anyway, so we're connecting in a way to try to support our students that in my 12 years I had not seen that previously. And I'm excited about the work. I think we're pulling good people together. I think the concepts are best practice. And it drives my work every day. I think that's my last one. Yes. So there's my contact information. Jim Patton, jpatton at bcps.k12.md.us. And Deborah Brooks, Dr. Brooks is my boss. She's the executive director of the Office of Special Education. And she could not be here this evening, but she sends her regards, and she's very, very supportive of all the work that we're doing.
So again, like I said, my name is Eric Banzak. I'm the coordinator of prevention and intervention. This is my colleague, A.B. Pearsall. He is passing around some resources that we have that we wanted to share with you today. You should have 2 resources. One is a pamphlet coming around, and the next will be coming around. It's just a copy, front and back, of what the bullying and harassment policy, or not policy, but actually the code of conduct, what is in the code of conduct. For when a child gets in trouble for bullying, you could see firsthand, I don't know if you've ever looked at the code of conduct, but you can really see the levels, and we'll talk a little bit about that today. So this is the standard definition of bullying. I'll give you a couple seconds to read it, and while you're reading it, I'm just going to talk. So within Baltimore City, this is our definition, but I do want to put a disclaimer out that in September, we overhauled our policy, we overhauled our definition of bullying, and in September will be our first reader that we're going to go to the board and present that information of a new policy. So this is going to change, but as of currently right now, in Baltimore City, this is the definition that we use. So, but I just wanted to put a disclaimer out that we are overhauling it. We felt that it needed to be a beefier definition, and we felt that this didn't do justice. But I did want to point out the 3 words that are bolded here: intentionally, repeated, and power and balance. So those are the 3 words that, like a principal, when they read the code of conduct, that they look for, because in the code of conduct, and like I said, I'll pass it out later, but it looks at was there intentionally harm done, or was it repeated over time? And this is where I think principals get confused, and I think it's training on our part that we have to do a better communication with them, is they have to understand that one incident is not a bullying incident. One incident is just an incident between two students in the building. But if it's repeated over time, then that's bullying. Or if it's happened multiple times. Or if it's intentionally, then that falls into that category. But if it's just an incident, I think that's where they get confused. Next, this is the city schools definition of bullying, harassment, and intimidation. Again, like I said, it's long. So you can take a couple seconds to read it. I'm going to talk while you read it. But in Baltimore City, we are mandated by COMAR that we have to report all incidents of bullying and harassment in the district. And we have what's called...
What's COMAR?
COMAR is state-regulated... I'm trying to think of... Thank you. So, but it's mandated by the state to say that this is what we have to do as a district, and I'll get into the 3 policies that we have to do with bullying. And we as a district, we have what's called a bullying, harassment, and intimidation form that every school has access to, every parent has access to. It is online, that needs to be filled out when there's an incident that takes place at a school. And I'll get a couple slides a little bit later about talking about the form, because this is what I really want to highlight today. I know I'm kind of moving through this quick, but what we get a lot of questions for, at least from my office, when parents come to North Avenue is they just don't know the process, or the school didn't do a good job of teaching the process to them, or what do they need to do next. And this is what we've been trying to get out is this is the process, and this is what you need to do as a parent or guardian to follow. So, okay, next slide, please. These are the federal laws that prohibit disclaimers against individuals based on a number of categories. So, again, this is federal law, and schools have been sued for failing to protect the rights of students to be safe or respected or treated fairly. So, the law does back. We do see it. A couple years ago, Grace's Law came out, and that has to do with intimidation through the internet and electronic bullying. So the federal law does put out things. We do follow the federal laws. But I just wanted to put this up here so you could see, as a parent or guardian, of like what schools have been sued before, and then schools that receive federal funding are required to protect students' civil rights. Again, this is just, this is what we try to follow, we have to follow. And we have 180 schools, and like Jim said earlier today, are we meeting the needs of every student? No, we're not meeting the needs of every student. I always think we could do better. Even if my evaluations or things say that I'm doing a good job, I always try to do better. And I think that we always need to do better. So these are the three laws that I was talking about COMAR, about the state of Maryland. The first one is safe and supportive schools. So, again, if you look at the bolded words right at the very end, are free from any form of harassment. So this is the number one. Number two is the Safe Schools Reporting Act, is what I talked about us having the bullying and harassment form that we have to report. We report our data to the state every December. So every December we have to report our incidents from the past school year. So this school year that just ended, we are now compiling our data, and we are now going to, in December, then have to send it to the Maryland State Department of Education, and they will take our data along with all the other school districts in the state, and they will compile it, and that's when you could go online, and then you could see how many bullying incidents we had in the district, and they break it out by category. Was it done on electronic? Was it done in this classroom? Was it done outside on the playground? They break it all down. So, and the last is what I talked about, Grace's Law, is the misuse of electronic communication. And this, like I said, this was passed, I think, about 2 years ago. And basically, it just says that you cannot bully or harass anybody through an electronic device. So this is where I really want to spend the time, how to report an incident. So the first thing that we ask a parent when they come to our office is did you fill out the bullying and harassment form? And a lot of times they will say, no, I do not know where that is, I don't know what that is, and then we will sit down and take the time. So the bullying and harassment form, first off, is just a form that you can find online. All you need to do is go to the Baltimore City website, and on the Baltimore City website, if you just type in bullying and harassment form, and you hit go on the search button, it's the first thing that pops up. You click on it. Anybody can do it anywhere in the United States. You click on it, and then it'll bring you to the Baltimore City harassment form, and then you fill it out and just ask questions like, where did the bullying take place? Who was the bullier? Who was the victim? Anybody can fill it out. So it's teacher, student. So we try to stress that. A lot of times parents think it's just a teacher that can fill it out, or it's just a parent that can fill it out. It could be a friend of a student. It could be a parent that sees another incident happening. We try to stress that anybody can fill this out, and it'll break that down to like if you're just a witness. But we want that report because we don't. And you'll see in my last slide is we don't look at bullying the reports as a negative thing. We look at it as like how do we get better. How do we support? And if we're not getting those reports in, then there's no way that I can know, or no way other people at North Avenue, like Jim talked about all the supports that we have in schools. How do we get that support out to schools? How do we get a crisis team out there? How do we get a social worker or psychologist out there to support in the need of bullying? So that's the first step, is to fill out the form. Once you fill out the form, it will go into the system. And that is what is important. Because if you hand in a paper copy, sometimes we get excuses of they never got it, they didn't receive it, or, we get all those kind of excuses. You put it in electronically, it is there and is there to stay. And the good thing is when it goes in electronically, myself gets an email, the principal gets an email, and there's a couple other people in North Avenue get an email. So now then it's electronic footprint that form was filled out. So now there's no more excuses. So now it's on the school and the principal to then have 48 hours to conduct an investigation. Once that investigation is done, it is their job to then inform both parties that were involved of the incident and what is the next steps. Is consequences going to happen for the victim or for the bullier, things like that. But that's the biggest thing that we try to stress is once it's in there, to follow up with the school. Stay on top of the school. Find out what they're doing. Find out what investigations were done. Find out what supports they have that could support the child at the school. Because a lot of times they won't fill it out or they'll fill it out, but nothing is being done. And if that's the case, if you follow up to the school and you're finding out that investigation is not being done, this is where I want you to take part in this last one. If you're going to take pictures of that last bullet. That last bullet is the Ombudsman office. Karen Lawrence is the Ombudsman for Baltimore City Schools. This is the phone number. This is where we say that if you filled out a form and you followed up with the school and you still feel that nothing is being done, then we ask that you come to North Avenue and then you meet with the Ombudsman office and you fill out a report. Because what the Ombudsman will do is then file a report herself, and then they will follow up with the school. They will follow up with us. We used to have student support liaisons in the district that were one per network. The title has changed now to managers. They would then go out to the school and do their own investigation for North Avenue to figure out why hasn't anything been done. So that is the steps, and I just really wanted to share that today. I really wanted to spend some time on that because we feel like, every time we talk to a parent or something like that, they didn't know that, or they didn't know that the school typically had 48 hours. They feel like, okay, I hit submit, and then the next morning they're there at 8 o'clock in the morning saying what is being done. And the principal hasn't even opened up their email yet. So we typically say it's 48 hours. Now, obviously, I got complaints that a parent submitted one on a Friday and it's Monday morning and they're like, nothing's been done. It's been 48 hours. Well, business days, like principals have families, people have families, and I have children of my own. That's my first thing. So I'm going to protect them as much as possible. But we have to be understanding to the school too as well that the principal, we usually say they should have 2 days, business days, to follow up and do a report. And then from a principal's aspect, I'll share this real quick. Once an investigation is done, they have to do a follow-up that the parents don't see, but we see on the North Avenue side, is they do a follow-up and they tell us about the investigation. They tell us about what they did, what the consequences were. And then once we get that, then they can close it out. So if we don't receive that and it's still open, then we have to do some data cleansing to find out, wait, this form was filled out. Why haven't you closed it out? So we do that on our end, on the back end, to figure out the form was filled out, but we haven't seen the other form that goes hand in hand with the investigation. So this is City Schools Policy and Regulations. So do you have the sheet in your hand? Did you pass out the sheet? So you should have the sheet in your hand that shows the Code of Conduct. So I just wanted to take a minute to kind of go over this. So this is just a page copied out of our Code of Conduct. That we revise every year. We try to make it better. Obviously we can't please everybody, but we do our best. And the Code of Conduct, for if you don't know what the Code of Conduct is, it's a book that we give out to principals, and they get training on it every year. We make sure every school has to attend the training. And basically what it does is it shows different levels of different incidents that might occur in the building. So if you will see on page 10, let's start with page 10 in the right-hand corner, you'll see that side of the page. If you see that, this is if you see at the top, it says bullying, including cyberbullying and gang-related incidents. So if a child was, if the bullying harassment form was filled out and they did an investigation, the principal found that this child was a bullier, this is where the principal would go. So the principal would sit down, open up the Code of Conduct, and then determine which level does the child get for the consequence. So you will see that the very first one, you'll see levels 1, 2, and 3. If you read it, on the left-hand side it says intentional conduct, including verbal, physical, or written conduct, or electronic communication that is threatening or seriously intimidating and substantially disputes the order of the operation of the school. So the highest is that if the principal found that investigation led to that, the highest is a level 3 that they could give a child. A level 3 is a short-term suspension, which is 1 to 3 days. Now, if you go down, remember that very first definition I showed you? If you go down to the next category where it says serious bullying, this goes in that repeated over time. When I talk about repeated over time, this is where you'll see it goes from a level 2 all the way up to school police informed. So this is where you could actually get suspended, expelled, removed from the building for 45 days. And this is the other thing I stress to the parents is that if you think it's a bullying, fill out the form. Let the investigation determine whether it's a bullying or not, but if you think it is, fill out the form. Because then that way you have a track record to show that it's repeated over time. And it's not somebody saying, oh, well, I know there's 4 incidents, but I only have 1 bullying and harassment form. If we have 4 of them, then we could show that it is repeated over time. We hate to do that because it shouldn't be repeated over time. It should be nipped and done and taken care of. But, this is another way that it shows documentation. And but I wanted everybody to see that you could see that when a principal makes the decision, this is what they're looking at. They're looking at the code of conduct. And now they're worried. They're trying to figure out which level is best determined. And this is where we try to drive restorative practice. We've been pushing that restorative practice drive or circle to help do that informative, to sit down and try to repair the harm with that. And I know Jim talked a lot about the supports that we offer. But obviously, if a consequence is warranted, we're saying a consequence is warranted, and then restorative practice will come in and the restorative justice side and repair the harm. So, if you turn over to the second side of the sheet, you'll see that's where the harassment side is. So, our form is bullying and harassment form. So, the reason why it's on 2 separate sides is just because it's alphabetical order. It's not like they just intended to split it up. It's just they did alphabetical order. But again, you can see levels 1 or level 2 for minor harassment. Or if it goes into serious harassment, again, it goes from a level 2 all the way up to a level 5. So, let you take a couple seconds to look at that. Next slide. This is some bullying prevention that we have in the district. OVEUS is a really big bullying intervention that we pushed out about 3 years ago, that every school had a certified person to take the course of OVEUS, and it was about a 3 to 4 hour online course. You took the course and then you became a certified, so that way there was somebody in the building to have the extra knowledge what to do if there was bullying in the building. Move This World, they focus more on elementary students, but they use empathetic movement to change behavior. Obviously, us, Baltimore City Public Schools, PBIS is a big one. We have about 80 schools in Baltimore City that focuses on PBIS. And then again, we have a partnership with IIRP, which is the International Institute for Restorative Practice. So these are just some of the things that schools are doing. Not saying that these are just focused on bullying in the classroom or in the school, but they have components to help build the climate and culture to make it a safe environment. So, next slide. And this is the last one I'll talk about, other policies and law notes. This is what I was talking about earlier, where it says bullying reports are not part of a student's permanent record or cumulative file. Bullying reports should not be considered a negative data point. This is what I was talking about, is we want to know accurate reporting. We can only start with baseline, but if schools aren't reporting it or if parents aren't reporting it, then we don't know it happens. And that's what's scary, because a lot of times, I'll get an email, a parent will send an email saying that this, horrible bullying incident happened, and when I start talking to the school and start doing my own investigation, nobody knows about it. And that's what's scary, because, if we don't know about it, we can't provide those supports. We can't get the related service office in there to, provide that. So if you think it's bullying, fill out the whole form. I'd rather have 20,000 forms and only have 10 bullying incidents, but at least we know when we're ready to act on it. So I think that's my last slide. Yep. So here's my contact information. This is Avery's contact information. Again, my executive director, she couldn't make it today. Their time is precious in Baltimore City, and they wish they could be here. But there's my contact. Best way to reach me is email.
And I know people have big stories around this topic. Just before we get to questions, anybody have a story that they want to share that relates to this topic?
Hello, my name is Bion Melvin, and so my story I want to share is my oldest daughter, and she got out of high school. She, for a whole year, didn't know that she was being cyberbullied. One day I was at work, she called, couldn't get in contact with me. I checked my messages to hear that she was like, "Mom, these girls are following me home." So the girls that was bullying her for a whole year came up to her school and followed her home. And it was sad that it got to the point where the girls had to fight. They tried to break my daughter. My daughter, that was her first fight, for one. And for two, I got a little upset about the situation, because sometimes when kids are fighters, or they're not the type of kids that like very aggressive, when situations like this can open up, like I saw her Pandora's box and turn them into somebody else. What she learned from the situation, her and the girl, one day, they were at an event or something, and her and the girl who was the bully, the ringleader, who initiated the fight after my daughter beat her up, she wanted to talk. And it was just a miscommunication, a misunderstanding, pretty much. The girl's boyfriend, it started over a boy, was really good friends with my daughter, and the girl was jealous. She thought that my daughter was messing with the guy. So she wanted to fight my daughter all over a guy, which was just a misunderstanding, which my daughter was like, no, we're really good friends. So if she would have talked to her in the beginning, it would have never got to this point. And it's sad, I also say that it's sad because a lot of parents, when you approach the other parent about the situation, the first thing they would say is what my child didn't do. Well, my child's not that type. And like I had to tell her mom, I can say a lot of things about my child, which I know she's not, but when she's outside, our children are totally different. I'm getting a little nervous. So, what I'm just saying is, like, as parents, we have to be more involved and get to learning our kids a little more. And as my daughter always tells me, Mom, you always in my business, which if I would have learned about the situation a year ago, I would have tried to sit down and talk to both of the girls, which is sad that I told her I need to be more involved in, because that makes me think as a parent that I'm not doing my job, because why would she be inside with bullies for a whole year? Maybe if I was looking on the computer, or maybe if I was checking her messages on her Instagram page just a little bit more, I would have seen that this was going on. Or maybe if I was paying attention to the way she acts, or when she lashed out at me, I would have realized that something was really wrong. And I could have, like I said, helped her out with her situation. That's all.
My name is Kenyatta, and the thing that I want to talk about was in the slide, it mentioned one of the definitions, or one of the things that it was talking about was when it defined bullying, it said that is it intentional? You know, is this something that happens over a period of time, or is it something that just happened once? And sometimes we as parents, adults, or whatever, we need to, when we're getting more involved, we can sometimes, alleviate the things before it gets to, the administration of in the school. My son had an incident in school last year, but him and a good friend of his, they were coming home from school, and my son said he wasn't playing. The boy was playing, and he jumped on my son's back, made him fall to the ground, hit his head, and break his glasses. So as a parent, your child comes home, he has a bruise, broken glasses, is like what's going on? You need to tell me now, what's going on? And because, like you said, your child, my son, he's rather timid. I know that in school he's the same way. I have a really good rapport with his teachers. So, he's not a troublemaker. So, but I had to calm down, for myself first. And I brought it to the teachers' attention before I took it to administration. And we were able to actually sit down and resolve the issue before, I never even had to bring it to the school. The teacher also had a good rapport with the other boy's father, and she gave me his number. We talked about it, and but before I was able to talk to the father, I asked the young boy, because he's been to my house plenty of times. I asked him, what's your mom's number? He gave me the mom's number. The mom was just not trying to have it. She was just real rude and ignorant and whatever. But the father was like, we can handle this. We worked out a payment plan, and everything was fine, and the boys went back to being friends. So sometimes we, like you said, we definitely have to be more involved and realize, okay, he's not being bullied. This was just a one-time incident.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mary Kinyoni, and I work with Unique Children. I have one incident as we were sharing with a parent about today is a meeting. This parent told me something that I didn't know, but I know the same parent had a child who came to our high school. The child was beaten several times, and the last time he was beaten in the in the restroom, and his phone snatched. He didn't know what to do because he doesn't have English. These are refugees, And they fear because everywhere they have come, serious things have been done to them, including threats. If you report something, threats to be killed, and they have seen their fellows being killed. So they come with that fear here. And when this parent is a single parent, is a mother. She has 5 children. Her big son was beaten so seriously. Now in the cafeteria, they were going to cafeteria. And the way we got the student who did it was the school camera now. Because in the bathroom, there was nothing, no camera. But now with the camera, we had to sit in front of the camera for hours, but we got hold of him. All was done, he was expelled 3 weeks. The mother was told, because there is evidence, come, you report, because the boy has healed, but still his head is swollen, and this is more than almost a year now. His head is swollen one side. Now, this mother told me now, like last week when we were sharing, that the other 2 kids are in one of the elementary schools, and they are very good in soccer. Now, whenever they score or they dribble the ball so well, they are being kicked and threatened in the school, and she doesn't know what to do. So, in such a case, how do you handle that case? The parent fears to follow, but the parent fears for her children. Is a family that is torn apart. I don't know how we can help such.
I feel like there's sometimes a gap between how things should work in terms of a procedure and then what your real lived experiences are, and we need to resolve those 2 worlds so that there's real progress on the issues.
From the experience this parent has had with her children in the 2 different schools. And now she fears to go forward. The case in high school was followed, but she didn't want to go ahead and take this other family to court. There was evidence because of the fear she has right from where they have come from. They are running, looking for safety. They have come to this country, they have no language. She is a single mother having 5 children, so she fears. So fear weighed her down. I tried even to talk to her in the language she talks. Because we share, I can talk her language. And she said, I don't want troubles to follow me. They may come to look for me in the house. You see, this is the understanding they have. Now these others are being bullied now in another school. They're in elementary. And now she is worried. This is what she shared. So how do you handle such a parent?
Yeah. Parents who fear reporting.
Yep, I figured you had something like a newcomer.
Okay, first of all, I'm sorry for that parent's bad experience. I'm a parent of 6 myself, and no parent wants to live with that. Depending on the school, actually the newcomer project that I manage for immigrant students, that might be able to provide some support. They have social workers. I would advise the parent, the two ways to go would be to talk with the school principal and also to talk to the social worker. Because the social worker can help to link the woman or her children with community resources, and can work with the school psychologist to provide whatever mental health support that the children might need. The administrative function is the principal of, I'm going to talk to the parents and we're going to do this follow-up and whatever happens with the bullying form. But my heart goes out to the woman. I can understand how we have a lot of our immigrant students, a lot of the families that are not legal or scared to death of ICE, and they're scared. Some of the parents are scared to let their kids come to school because they're afraid they'll be grabbed. It's a very Good. So, but that would be the first 2 courses of action. I would be to talk to the principal and also to talk to the social worker. And if the principal is not responsive, then the principal has a boss too, which would be their executive director, which you should be able to find on our website. You also could reach out to Dr. Warren's office, or they could reach out to my office. We get emails often from parents or from teachers that are concerned with situations like that. And the first thing we do is we reach out to the social worker and the psychologist, and we say, look into this, try to figure out what's going on, and talk to the principal about what the plan needs to be. But to just be paralyzed and afraid to do anything, that's not good.
A person mentioned this program, Castle, and so So I was actually wanted you to explain what CASEL is and exactly how many schools have CASEL.
Okay.
All right, so CASEL stands for Collaborative Academic Social Emotional Learning, and it's a company based out of Chicago. And like Jim said earlier, they focus on they call them 5 competencies, which are social awareness, relationship building, decision making, self-awareness, and there's one more. Responsibility. So those are the 5 competencies, and what they're basing those off of the CASEL is they're saying that if you follow these 5 competencies, then with academics, so you get your math, you get your literacy, then you look at the whole child, that the whole child should be prepared leaving high school. Because one of the things that we learned was, at least I was as a former guidance counselor, I always said, are we really preparing our students for the future? Yes, they might know how to read. Yes, they might know how to write. They might know how to add. But are we hitting those other social emotional skills that you need to learn, like decision making or taking care of themselves, or just the simple basics of adding a checkbook, or knowing how to dress at an interview, or knowing how to talk to certain people? Are we teaching those social emotional skills? And I was saying this back in 2008 when I was a guidance counselor. But the district has now committed themselves to be a CASEL district. So what that means is they're partnering with this company, and this company is now coming once a month to work with our schools of how do we set up getting this social emotional learning throughout the district. We've been doing it here and there in pockets. So like I know Related Services works with the high school School Connect. That is a big framework of social emotional learning. We have Second Step, Capturing Kids' Hearts, Restorative Practice. They all deal with social emotional in one way, but like we've never brought it together. And that's what this company is supposed to be doing and working with us. It's not going to happen overnight. We've been looking at Cleveland Metropolitan School District, and I think they've been doing it now for 11 years, and they still say they don't have it down. But they're making strides. So it doesn't happen overnight. But to your second question, how many schools are doing it? Through the blueprint, like Jim talked about earlier, there's 3 cohorts going on. And one cohort has to do with literacy, the other cohort has to do with CASEL, and the other cohort has to do with restorative practice. Literacy has 20 schools, CASEL has 20 schools, and restorative practice has 15. So to answer your question, there will be 20 schools going in a deep dive in CASEL for this upcoming school year. And then next year, I believe, they're going to do the blueprint for 3 years. And I don't know if they'll up that number another 20, but as of right now, 20 schools are going to go deep dive. But then it also said the rest of the schools in the district should get a touch of CASEL. So when a touch means, I don't know, CASEL, even though it's part of Whole Child, I've just been involved here and there, but a touch means like the 101 basics of learning what SEL is, learning about the 5 competencies, and learning we as a district should be teaching this, we as a district school should be teaching social and emotional learning. So I hope that answers all your questions.
Also, they've done multiple professional developments for school leaders across the district, and it's included in all of our trauma work.
Yes.
Do we have 157 schools?
I think it's 154 traditional schools and then like 35. It's like 179 schools or something total with charters as well. So, yes.
I wanted to address this in a way as not to sound too critical, but I probably will. I have worked in some schools, and I have to say that a lot of what happens is because of the culture of the school and how certain cultures are allowed to grow and fester. And this issue around bullying, I worked in a school that had fights at least once a day, every single day, until a child who was so bullied and so terrified attacked a child who was bullying him every day, in and out of school, until that child was injured and ultimately died of his injuries. So prior to that happening, what is there in place to hold schools accountable for doing these things that you all have talked about? The intent is good, but the actual operation of them is really not. I have a couple questions. You look like you moved.
So can we answer your first one before you go on?
Okay.
Because I just don't want to lose it.
Okay.
That's all.
So schools are accountable through every school has a boss, which is called the ILED, which is the Instructional Leadership Executive Director. So every network has one. If you can't hear me, let me know. I'm trying to use my teacher voice, but it's been a while since I've been in the classroom. So ultimately, the ILED, the Executive Director, holds the principal accountable for the climate and culture of the building, along with the academic success, along with the attendance, along with the suspension. So that falls under the ILED to hold the principal accountable for. My office, we have always been there that we are support. We're there to support. Now, when we come in and we provide a support for you, we try to hold the school accountable. I mean, I don't oversee a principal, so I can't, make the principal jump, but we try to put things in place that will hold teachers and principals accountable to changing the climate and culture.
As an advocate who is working in a school, would I have been able to come to your department and report what I'm seeing every single day and the culture that's being continued every day? What is this, the IRED?
ILED. ILED, so Instructional Leadership Executive Director.
All of our schools are grouped into networks of like 10 or 12 schools, and each one has an executive director who the principals report to.
All right, so then
And she's an
my
advocate for
question is basically around the mental health issue and the social workers. So intent, as I said before, intent is great, but what actually happens isn't. So I've been in schools where the mental health of a child doesn't just mean the child has an identifiable clinical diagnosis. It can mean a child's behavior because of how they think. It can mean bringing the culture
Exposure
of their
to trauma.
Yes, the trauma. So they bring the culture of their communities into a school. And I talked with a social worker about certain things that I observed, such as the profanity that children use in schools to every adult in there. And some adults, in some instances, are too afraid to say anything to the children, but I didn't come up in that era. So I'm going to say something to the children and correct them. And I said something to the social worker about the profanity, and her response to me was, well, that's part of their culture in their home. But that's not the culture that should be happening in the school. So adults enable all of this. Social workers give children, I started giving children popsicles and candy all during the day. And then you want them to sit and be attentive, and you're filling them full of sugar all day.
Sure.
So when this happens, again, can I, as an advocate who would be working in the school, come to North Avenue and say, listen, I don't know what you all are doing, but this person is not good, because I know what's good for my children.
You can shoot me an email. You don't need to come in person. You can, or you can call me. But I often have reached out to the instructional leader executive directors when there's a problem that I see not getting resolved with a student or in a school. I have no problem doing that. We've had a couple of instances where, multiple instances actually over the course of the year, where there would be a child in some type of emotional crisis, could be related to bullying, and I would reach out, or someone from my team would reach out to the principal, and it did not seem as though things were progressing. We will absolutely reach out to the executive director and say, and that's the reason too. We're not perfect, we know that, but that's the reason too why one of the problems with the blueprint is leadership, trying to build strong leaders. And for some of the programs that we do in my office, we have an early intervention program that we do for pre-K through second grade. We're in 33 schools. We actually have a rubric that we go in and we evaluate the readiness of the school for that type of a program, a project. And Eric is doing evaluations of restorative practice to see how well those things are working.
A lot of times these things don't work because they're not implemented properly. And then you have adults in buildings that enable this behavior of these children, and their mental health suffers every single day because they think what's abnormal is normal.
Well, they also look at our children with a deficit model. What's wrong with you? Not what happened and how can I support you?
Right.
How can I connect to you?
Right.
That's true. We're working on it, but yeah, you're right.
And then we have another question over here, and then we're going to go over here. And that one over here.
So, what measurable tools are used to show the success of the process? Because it seems to me that a whole year is a long time before bullying is addressed. So, what measurable tools are used to show the progress?
So,
So I can speak for the tools that we use in our office, and I think Jim, just talked a little bit about it right now. Is with Restorative Practice or those companies that I showed you on the one slide, we try to put fidelity management tools in place to show are they working. But I'll tell you right now, only as of last year, we had 55 schools using Restorative Practice. Well, I say they were all using it great, and they were all rock stars now. But we have 55 schools. Again, we have 154 schools, right? We have 80 schools that are using PBIS. Again, are they all rock stars? No, we had 53 get recognized by the state. We try to put tools in place, for PBIS. What I talk about with PBIS is we go in Restorative Practice, we come out in the fall, and we try to measure see where the framework is and where the program is, to see where the deficits are, so what supports can we provide the school. But unfortunately, again, are we perfect? No. We can only come in. And I think it goes back to who holds them accountable, right? It goes to the leader of the building, and it goes to the IOED. If you see things that are happening, if you email us, I know most of all the IOEDs because that's my relationship with them, to say, how can we fix this school? What can you do? Or like Jim said, it's online. If you go to the Baltimore City website and you type in Executive Director, IOED, they'll come up and it'll show you which one is which network. So if the school you're looking at will say Network 4, it will show you who the IOED is, and your email is right there, and you can email them personally. I'm sure they'll probably shoot me for saying that, but they are right there. That's why our emails are on websites. So you could send that because, I could talk about the fidelity tools that I use and we have in place. And I know Jim has, he talked about the readiness rubric with PEO and things like that. We put certain tools in place. Principals get sick of us coming in and trying to look at them and try to measure their buildings. But we know we have to do that because we have to hold them accountable so that way we have a safe climate of school culture and climate. So, but again, are we perfect? Are we hitting 154 schools? I'll tell you right now, I'm just one person. I'm not hitting 154 schools. I'm trying my best, and people know that I'm all over the place. But, it's we have a large district. So, cool. I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to jump over here.
Hi, my name is Tia. I'm a parent, pediatric nurse, and environmental educator. On the topic of trauma-informed care and restorative practices, there's been a lot of research stating that children spending time outside can reduce all of these negative behaviors that we are seeing in our schools. So aside from the recess suggestion, is there anything else going on in the district to ensure that children, or is there anything holding schools accountable for making sure that the kids are getting recess?
So what I can answer, what I know is we have other companies like Playworks that go into school and try to provide that outdoor activity, but it goes into the leader of the building. So the leader of the building, so the principal decides the schedule, they determine, the bell schedule, and then they determine how that day flows. But there is research study that says that, the more time outside, the more productive schools the children will be in schools. So there is studies, I don't know if it's evidence-based, but I know there are studies out there that show that, but it's up to the leader. So it's up to the leader to decide that, if that's going to be in there or not. So.
And by leader, you mean principal, right?
Principal, yes. If I say leader,
I just wanted to know.
I'm working my way.
I wanted to know what is the district's biggest fight? What do you all struggle with? What is the biggest fight that you're encountering, if you're encountering the fight at all? Because, there's a huge gap and separation and communication between the communities, the schools, and the district. So what is the biggest fight that you all are fighting so it can roll downhill and create, right?
I'd say my biggest fight, I'll let Jim answer his, my biggest fight is since we deal with school-wide behavior frameworks is how do I involve the community with what the school is doing so they understand, because I always tell a principal if you're doing restorative practice, you're building a safe environment inside the building, you're building a community inside your school, but the school is built inside of a community. So how are you involving the community? Because they have resources that can provide you as well. So that's my biggest fight is don't leave the parents out, don't leave the community out, bring them in. But a lot of leaders, it seems like it's a struggle for them. So I think they need to be restored as well. But that's my biggest fight. At least I have to.
If I could speak for Dr. Santelises, what I've heard her say many times, words to this effect: equity, ensuring equity for our students, not equality, equity. Give them what they need to succeed when they come to school. And every student is different, and every student's needs are different. So that's our biggest struggle, in my opinion. I think in her opinion. Now, for me, with the work that I'm doing, and obviously you can tell I'm excited about it. We're really trying to do some good work. Mindset is probably the biggest frustration. Getting people to change their mindset, to think a new way, to be open to new ideas. And it's hard to get teachers. We have the least amount of time with teachers, who are the ones who spend the most time with the kids. And trying to get that time and change mindset in the moment when the teacher's got 30 kids and a whole bunch of stuff happening, and somebody flips a desk over. It's hard to take a deep breath and reset yourself and respond in a more trauma-responsive way. And so that's probably the toughest struggle with that work.
Good question. I don't need a mic.
Yeah, I think you're talking to me.
So the process seems really long, right? A year to talk about the bullying and stuff. What I didn't hear you talk about is how the teachers involved, because they seem to be the one that will be there that can also talk about what's happening. So how's the teacher involved in that actual process, reporting the bully? And then I also want to know, I'll just ask 2 of them. I got 9. But how were the 20 schools selected for Castle, and how can we find out what those 20 schools are that was actually selected?
So I'll start with your first one. So with teachers being involved, one of the things that we push out through restorative practice is when repairing a harm, how do you get the teachers to be involved in repairing that harm? How do you bring everybody who was involved in that to a circle, to bring them into one group to figure out how do you repair the harm, to listen to that. Again, I'll go back to it's the administrator. So when the administrator does the investigation, I would hope that the principal would talk to the teachers of the students who were in that classroom to talk, because obviously they're the boots on the ground, right? They know the students. They're there every day with them. So, and that's part of the things that we look at in an investigation is like, who did you talk to? Did you just talk to one person? Did you talk to multiple people? But again, they're the ones that do the investigation. We try to give them guidance. Like I would sit there and say, like, on this situation, you should talk to these people. Here's how you should do it and stuff like that. They reach out to us. But on just an over big arching view of it, it's up to the administrator to do the investigation. So we would, hope they would go in there. And then to answer your second question, how were Castle schools chosen? About this time last year, actually the same time last year at the CEO's Institute, which happens on Wednesday, they pushed out the blueprint. They talked about the cohorts of what I talked about, the 3 different cohorts. And they basically gave a date for, I think it was like October 30th was the first date of letter intent. What schools were interested? Again, it goes back to the equity, and it goes back to like, we just don't want certain groups, because I'll be honest, we have certain principals who will jump on everything, and some principals won't. And how do you, spread the wealth out basically throughout the district? And then from that letter of intent, they went and saw, and then they, I think it was like November 1st till December 15th was an application process that every school had a chance to apply. Either one. They can apply for literacy, Castle, or restorative practice. And then from there, I think there was like 35 schools that applied, and then they went through an interview process. And then from that interview process, it was then determined from the selection. And that's how all 3 groups were picked. So, to answer your question, that's like they try to do it in a fair process. So I'm going to have time for one more question, and I have to leave. I don't know about Jim, but I do have to leave. So I'm going to go back here.
This is actually a point of information. I learned this week about an app called Rethink that was invented by a teenager. And she's been featured on an Ed TED Talk. And that app can be used by kids to give them some things they can do before they push that button and send a really negative bullying type.
Rethink, you said?
It's called Rethink, yeah. And I also see that federal substance abuse and mental health administration has another one called No Bullying, KNOW Bullying. It's an app that parents could use to try to identify things that might really be seriously bullying. So those are 2 resources. Maybe we can put them on our resource list. But I was really impressed that this 16-year-old invented this app. That was her response to being bullied was, I'm going to invent an app to help prevent it.
I just have a quick question. Last year, I taught for 5 years at Moravia Park Elementary School, and last year had an instance where one of my students was getting bullied on the bus, and first it was just verbal, then it turned into an actual physical assault, and the child and the parent came the next day very upset, not wanting to ride the bus anymore, and we found out it was bullying ongoing, and with our Arabic interpreter and the other student was in the Pride program, so we had the Pride teacher and the Pride social worker. We worked it out. We used the restorative practice cards and read through the questions and got each other to apologize and see each other's side. And then the social worker told me to fill out the bullying form. So I filled it out and turned it in, and my principal called me down and said, if you fill out this bullying form, it's going to be a heat ticket against our principal. And I was like, does this mean I can't fill it out? And so I didn't fill it out, and then 4 weeks later, that same kid who was bullying my student brought in a BB gun and 2 knives to school, and the teacher was like, I really wish you had filled out that bullying form so there'd be a paper trail on this child. And I was like, but I was told not to. And after this, I'm like, well, I probably should have gone to the district, gone to you guys, but it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be I go to North Avenue and I complain and that's how I get results. It should be on the school level, on the ground level. We know how to operate and we know how to deal with situations, and it doesn't get to the point where now we're calling the school police because there's weapons in the school. But I guess my question is, how do we get schools to actually function in a way that keep kids safe and have proper conflict? I didn't even want the school to do any consequences. We had taken care of it. We had done it. I just wanted to submit the paper trail.
Well, that's the first thing I would say is that's why I stress that anybody can fill out the bullying harass form. Don't have anybody bully you as an adult to say you can't fill it out. Fill it out.
That's the reason why we have it online. So this way nobody can stop you from doing it, right? If they're not going to let you fill out at the school, come to North Avenue, I'll let you use my computer, right? Go to the library, fill out the computer, because once it's in, it's in. And I think a lot of principals, and again, I take this back as a part of a failure of North Avenue is principals think that when a bullying form is filled out, it's a negative consequence, they're going to get persistently danger. That's not how you get persistently danger in a school. But principals have that mindset of if I have 10 of these, then my school is going to be a failure. No, it's not. It just means that you need to bring in supports because you have a bullying issue in your school, and how do we fix it? How do I come in, or how does a team come in? How does your IOED support you? That's all it means. It's not a negative thing, but a lot of principals have that negative mindset. And, and again, I think it's just us being a better communication from North Avenue to put that out to say it's not, especially we have new principals come in every year, and it's getting to them to let them know that this is not a bad thing. It's not, but don't let tell your parents, tell your colleagues, tell your friends that, if there's an incident, fill it out. Do it and fill it out. Don't let, anybody tell you not to fill it out. I mean, that's one beauty of it being online. And every district has it too. So if you have friends that are in different other districts across Maryland, every district has an online reporting, a bullying harassment form. Where it is, I don't know, but I know that we are mandated by MSDE that every district has to have an online reporting form. So, but let everybody know that it's there. I do apologize. I do have to go. So email me your questions. And, like I said, I usually get back to you within 6-7 hours. So thank you. And I'm passing
We're
on
not
to Jim.
done.
I know they're not done. Right? So,
I'm glad your experience with the social worker was good.
Thank you, Sean. Hi, I'm Cynthia Jahi, and I've been substituting in Baltimore City and Baltimore County for several years. And I've also lived in North Carolina. And what I see is the mental health problems that some of the children are having. They, let's say they're in the second or third grade, even the first grade level. Some of them, because of the course of that year, so let's say I started, let's say in April, they have become comfortable, some of them, in understanding that they have been labeled as having a problem. So what I've experienced is the children in other children's faces, I'm talking first, second, third grade level, very intimidating. And these children are being able to go out to these counselors. So I'm being told, okay, send them to the counselor. Or we can walk to the counselor's office. This is first grade, second grade, okay? After they've been in your face like this, you couldn't answer the question if it was written on your nose. Mm-hmm. Okay, I am 62. If she yelled at me like that, I'm kind of like, whoa. So now you have children who did not have a mental health problem. The 17 children who did not have a mental health problem, now they have a mental health problem. I'm the substitute, and I've got children running, say, Ms. Jahi, they're running in that corner to get away from this first grader who stands above them, maybe by 6 inches, because maybe he was held back. Okay? And he says to me, I do this all the time, and you can call the parent if you want to. What I'm saying is this here. You've got these social workers in the school. They come in and they wrestle these children down. They send them back to the classroom. We need specific things done. They cannot keep coming back to the classroom without receiving the help that they need for their mental health. And these other babies should not be harassed every day, not even only every day. Some of them, the poor babies, had the same bully in the first grade to follow up to the second grade and the third grade. So this is real. And then you're asking substitutes. I come to the classroom. Oh, Ms. Jahi, that one right there, you're going to have to do something special for him. There's not too much special you can do. You've got 20 other children. So that these departments that you have, you don't have the time right now to take the time that you're taking to get these things connected. You need to speed this thing up. Because guess what? They're not going to be first graders forever. They're not going to be second graders forever. You only have one time to be 7 years old. Now, I don't know about you. I never went back to be 7 years old. Did you? Did you go back? You don't have another time to be 13 years old. You don't have another time to be 5 years old. The day you're 5 years old, and next year you're going to be 6. So we need to speed this up. It's not that complicated because you have the PhDs. As far as I know. And you have the experience. That's what I want to say.
Can I just respond to that? I hear you, and it happens. I know it does, and my office gets called sometimes when that student who's acting out is having problems and needs extra support. Sadly, the first grader, it's a 4-year-old. Yeah. Sadly, when we were able to look in and see what's going on, there's a reason why that child's so angry. Sadly. And it's not necessarily something that we can fix in school. We try. But if the child hasn't eaten for 16 hours and is basically alone at home, which we find those types of things happen, can we talk to DSS and all that? Of course, and we do. But when we get cases just like you're describing, I've never had an instance where I couldn't say, no wonder he's angry. So, and is that an excuse? No. I'm just saying, as we look into it, we're trying to provide that support. And we're trying to provide a whole heck of a lot of mental health support in school, which is not supposed to be the school's job, but we are, because that's the way they can come down and be ready to learn and get over whatever experiences that they're having that are causing them to be in a place where it's difficult for them to focus.
And I do think part of our motive for having this event is to think about what do we do collectively, not just at the district level, though there may be things that need to improve there, but what do we do as a community? So after this comment, hopefully we can answer that question a little bit.
So I've heard a lot, and thank you to everyone who is sharing very frustrating experiences and dangerous. So we know that the district can't be everywhere and do everything. So it's similar to your point. How can we still need some accountability and some ways for parents and teachers to be supported? So I'm wondering about these family school councils that are supposed to, does everyone in here have that at their school building?
SFC.
No. At FSCs?
It depends on if it's functioning or not. Some of them don't
Okay,
function.
so that's an accountability. How do we make sure that those are functioning, and how can you explain to parents or anyone like how to connect those dots? I would like an answer as far as how you can move in that direction.
To meet the needs of the whole child, it can't be just school. It has to be parents. It has to be community. And we are trying to do that with our work around trauma. We're going to different community events. We're doing professional development for parents. We're doing a lot of work collaboratively with the health department around that type of work.
Is that the, sorry to cut you off, the students with disabilities only?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Yeah, no. We support all of our students.
And like someone else said, some of these issues are, just for general students. I just wanted to
Yeah, of course. No, our work is around trauma is for all of our students and our teachers. Some of our teachers, they experience secondary trauma. There's a school, Excel Academy, that lost 10 students to gun violence in a 18-month period. Those teachers, that's a special school for those to help those kids to get a wraparound support and services. They try really hard to connect with those kids, and they watch 10 of them get killed. I mean, so it's not just the kids, it's the faculty, it's the community, it's the parents. We all have to work together. And that's one of the reasons we come to things like this. Yeah, sure.
I'd also like to add that, I've seen in my 5 years with Baltimore City that it was the parent council or committee that started efforts that weren't necessarily working at the school. I'll just take Cecil Elementary for instance. Those parents at that school saw a need, and in order to help that need or to do something about the parent council, they created it themselves. Now, while that should have been handled by the school, this is where we bring in the community to at least say, here, we're stepping up, we're doing something about it, and we see the issues that are going on, let's at least do. I think that's the issue. A lot of the times we see the issues, we don't say anything, and then we don't do. So I think that's where the gap is with the schools. We can only hold the school accountable for so much, but the community, these are your kids in the schools. Write letters, call, show up. Like, this is what we need as district office staff to help us with the things that we're doing on a daily basis.
So I'm going to get Sharon and then somebody has something.
So my question would be, I'm Sharon Blake. So I spent 23 years as a classroom practitioner and educational, associate or whatever involved with the public school system. So my question would be, is there an effort on the part of the district to be able to connect with the American Federation of Teachers? It is the national union for the Baltimore Teachers Union that's doing work around helping schools retool the entire staff so that any staff person would be able to recognize children who are traumatized, and when kids display this behavior, it would help us as a classroom practitioner, for example, to know how to help de-escalate that child and provide. So the services, it's a retooling of not just for the central office, not just for administrators, but for the entire staff. That would include teachers, paraprofessionals, cafeteria workers, custodial workers, everyone in the building, every adult in that building is retooled to understand, because here again, change that mindset as to what's happening to young people. And not just that, build a capacity for the adults in the building to have a skill set to be able to respond to and help those young people who are displaying this behavior. Because without that, and it's ongoing, it's continuous, so it's not just a one-shot deal. So it's a retooling, and then the staff of those mental health institutions actually come in and work with all the adults in the building, and they found success there. So where you have everyone, every adult in the building, not just from a knowledge base, but also develop a skill set to learn how to respond to those young people. I'd like to see the district begin to move along that line. And again, the American Federation of Teachers is doing that work with some of the various schools, particularly in Connecticut.
I wanted to respond as far as the community piece is concerned, because I don't know, well, no, but about 20 years ago, I developed and ran an organization that was specifically designed to bring parents, community resources, schools, teachers, and students together. and to help to close up these gaps that we have between communities and schools, between parents and teachers, and to eliminate the adversarial mindset, because you were talking earlier about some principals being resistant to certain things coming into their buildings. And we have to address the mindset of enemy. Some principals and some teachers look at parents as the enemy, and they see parents coming and they throw up their hands and they want to just negate anything that they want to bring that could be positive. So the organization that I ran helped to address those things straight on. So to answer, to go back to what you were saying, my organization doesn't exist anymore, but the work that we did helped to change policy in Baltimore City Public School System around parent engagement, helped to develop strategies for parents and teachers and schools to use. We helped to organize statewide efforts to get Thornton pays. There are things that we did that were concrete because we believed in doing things that are systemic and not just a one-hit and a one-shot thing. However, as administrations change in our system, so do ideas and so do things that would work. If somebody comes along and they don't like it, they change it. We have to have a mindset change of a lot of the adults that run this system and understand that schools are not, about only the teachers. It's about the children. If we looked at our children as the product, that we have to get to a certain place, otherwise we're not doing our jobs, then we may do things differently. So we have to understand that our children are our focal point, and whatever we need to do, whatever we need to maintain in order to get them to a healthy place, both mind and mental and academically, we have to just buckle down and say this is what we have to do for our children. Because if we don't, we'll always be having these conversations.
Yeah. Can I respond?
Thank you. I completely agree. I've been with the district for 12 years. I'm on my 4th CEO. Dr. Santelises is unlike anyone else I've ever worked with. She has a vision. She understands black and brown children. She understands poverty. She understands what the kids are dealing with. And she's approaching the work with a not deficit model. It's not what's wrong with you. It's how can I support you for you to be successful. And she also, more than any, and I don't say I meet with her every day, but more than any of the other CEOs, she also understands academics. And so she understands what the lift needs to be to bring our kids to where they need to be and then make them ready to learn. So I can't tell you, other than I find her very visionary, and I think she's the best thing we've had in a long time. And I think she understands what she said. And I think she's leading our work pretty aggressively in that direction.
Let's hope she stays, because if she doesn't, somebody will come along at all.
Yeah. So we got a question over here, and then we'll come back.
Hello, everybody. How you doing? My name is Coley Tangela. I've been teaching with Baltimore City Public Schools and been involved in social activism for several years. I came here today just to check out the organization. I've been wanting to make it, but due to my schedule, I wasn't able to. I just want to share with you that the energy that I sense in this room, your physical presence here is utterly amazing, and don't be discouraged at all. As long as there's individuals like you within our city school system, our children are going to be educated, our children are going to be able to thrive. So I know collectively we all have our anecdotes of heinous, ridiculous, uncouth pathologies and behaviors brought on by intergenerational trauma. We all know the language, but we're going to have to stay motivated and educate ourselves. I've had to educate myself too, understanding the dynamic that my definition of what is a proper family isn't necessarily yours. So please stay encouraged, but also we got to decide whether or not we're going to take on the responsibility of organizing in a healthy way. It'll be great if the district did it. They're getting paid big mad bucks. You better do it because you're getting a fat check. But while we're waiting for their accountability, we're going to have to organize to make sure our children are successful. So just say, be not discouraged. Keep on your high grind, and it will save and inspire our children. And I got a genuine question to you, sir. Is the movement towards trauma-informed education, which I have known, the only way academic rigor is going to occur, syncretic seminars will ever happen, is until the unhealthy pathologies of that trauma that our babies bring each and every day are addressed. And the fact is, do not look down on parents, because they're doing the best they can under generations of systemic, institutionalized white supremacy and economic disenfranchisement that has destroyed their self-worth. But is trauma-informed care, restorative practices, truly going to be implemented? And if so, the accountability of it. Because the principals don't buy in, the teachers won't buy in, the parents won't buy in. And I'm tired of being the lone educator doing a restorative practice circle, checking in with my babies, and everybody else is not, because they don't see their principal being restorative with them.
We are unfortunately winding down on our time. So I know some of you had other things you wanted to ask and say. I do just want to say that we have some next steps as an organization, and I don't know exactly what it's going to look like yet, but I know that this issue around bullying and school climate requires parental involvement and community organizing. So the people that are most connected to schools need some structure for identifying some of the challenges within school. We can't just rely on the district, and we can't just rely on principals, unless you happen to win the lottery and get a great principal. But that's just not what the majority of our schools look like. So one of our next steps is to create a learning community or a working group or something around this idea of bullying, to figure out what can parents do at the school level around this issue. So we don't know what it's going to look like yet. I was hoping this event might help us clarify that. So what is clear to me is that parents have a role in this work, and that we need to figure out what that is together. So if you're interested in having a second conversation about what parents and teachers can do on the issue, make sure you let us know, because we're going to do something. I don't know what it is yet.
I started, toward the beginning of the discussion, I talked about our blueprint, which has three focuses. One is developing visionary leadership in schools. You speak to the principal. So developing those skills, looking at the child as a whole child wholeness, not with the deficit model, but taking them as who they are, where they are when they come through the door. And the third piece was literacy, which is basically critical thinking, to help students to make positive choices. So I don't know if you heard that part, but it really, I think, pretty directly ties into what you were saying was a need. And I'll talk to you after. Okay, thank you.
Again, I want to thank you all for inviting us out. I do want to add one last thing. We talked about the family community component. At each of your schools, each of your student schools, your grandkids, your nieces, nephews, neighbors, there is a person designated to that school called the Family Community Engagement Coordinator. Go to your principals, go to that office, and find out who that person is. That person should be connecting with you all on a more consistent basis. So find out who that person is, get their contact information, because this is what they do on a daily basis. But again, thank you for inviting us out today. Thank you.